So my first message, or the first thing that I learned as a coach, is not to overlook some of these year-end babies and find in your way, or put in place a system where you have different points where the athletes can enter regardless of which part of the year they are born, right? So for those of you who know a little bit about the theory, they call it the relative age effect. And the studies they have done looking at the elite athletes, they tend to pick athletes, or the elite athletes tend to be coming from those born in the first quarter of the year, right, as opposed to the end, for the reasons that I've shared earlier about picking the strongest, the biggest, the fastest. Because if you think about it, a January-born baby or an athlete versus a December-born athlete, they're almost a year apart, and that can make a significant difference, right? The other one also, when it comes to talent identification, is are we picking the person or the athlete based on performance, or are we selecting them based on potential? And sometimes it's difficult to decide whether this is performance or this is potential, and how high is that potential, right? So my first lesson, therefore, is, and that's what I'm sharing with you, is don't overlook the Yan baby. This is me, actually. I eventually went on to represent rugby, represent Singapore in rugby, so because I was not overlooked, right? So, for those of you who know about RAE and those who are planning to have children, so you should be planning for your child to be born in. If you want them to be successful, you wanna work with the system, you try to plan such that they are born in the first quarter. All right. So these are my two kids, and guess when they were born? Right. My girl there is born on 17th of December. All right. So what happened? In the heat of passion, sometimes you lose the sense of time. So you don't know which month of the year it was. All right. So my wife and I got a little bit smart. So for the second one, we planned very well. And the expected date of delivery when the doctor told us was 13th of January. So I said, okay, this one will definitely be a good athlete. He will get picked for a lot of sports, right? But he decided to come out 22nd of December. So, so the lesson learned here is give yourself a bit of buffer, right? Just in case they come out early, all right? But again, as I said earlier, just make sure that we don't overlook some of the year-end babies, because they might be athletes with a lot of potential, right? So don't leave them out. All right. Next is, we talked about this, and Dr. Norris talked about this as well very, very well. And this is the LTAD, or the long-term athlete development. Very nicely put: active start, fundamentals, learning to train, training to train, training to compete, training to win, and then active for life. Now, how many of us actually follow this? And I think in Singapore, unfortunately, we don't, right? We skip the active part. We don't do very well in the fundamentals, right? And those of you who are older in this room would agree with me, because when I was a young kid and in primary school, the PE program didn't really leave a positive impact on me, because I keep getting the Malay cikgu teaching me PE, and he's not trained in PE. So I didn't get a positive experience. So the fundamental is not there. And unfortunately, when you get to doing CCA in school, the focus is only, all right, you're in our CCA, we have a competition, national schools coming out, we train for you to compete, or we prepare you to compete, and then we're trying to train to win. So we skip sometimes all the different steps, and that will be the cause of some of the burnouts and the overuse injuries that we'll talk about this morning, right? So this is Bali's one as well. So pretty much we skip sometimes the long-term athlete development, and we choose the fast track, which is just training to train, training to compete, and training to win. So it's really about us realizing as coaches what we are aiming for. And during the break, I managed to speak to Mr. Ong Kim Soon, who is the director of MOE's PE and Sport Education branch. And he was talking about the conversations they have had with coaches, and they're trying to make some changes to this so that it will reflect a lot more of the LTAD in schools in terms of the competition. So I'm looking forward to the announcements that MOE will be making in the next year or two. All right. So this is Jean Cote's sort of model about development model for sports performance. And you can see there how it talks about the sampling years. And that's important, and it's been talked about quite a bit today, about the need to expose children to different activities and different sports rather than get them to specialize very early on. For me and my own experience, the sampling years came at the university when I decided to become a PE teacher. That's when I started to learn volleyball and frisbee and so many other sports. So it shouldn't be that way. It should be at the earliest stage that we introduce them to various sports, right? Otherwise, they will end up specializing too early, get injured, or get burnt out or bored, and then they drop out of the system altogether, which is not what we want, all right? So that's me. I've been, you see just a black round there, but that's actually me, trust me, yeah? So I started playing, didn't have a good experience in the earlier years, and only in P6 that I decided to play soccer. Not good enough for the school team, but just kept training with the team anyway. Right, went to secondary school, thought that I can only do soccer, not introduced to anything else, so there was no sampling. Until when I was in Sec 4, when this Australian expat teacher came along and decided to start rugby in the school. So he had an open invitation or open trials, for which I went to, and I got selected into the first team. So rugby was my first love. I got selected and I played in JC. I was given lots of opportunities to train, and I went on to be selected for the combined schools team, and we went for a tour in Darwin. Right, so this was the team back then. So that's me, the one that circled. Right, so we went all the way to Darwin, played 5 games, and in all the 5 games, I didn't get a chance to play. For some reason, until now, I still don't know what the reasons are. I didn't get a chance to play. So for a young athlete going all the way to Australia and didn't get a chance to play at all, what do you think I felt? How do you think I felt? And how do you think, or what do you think the relationship I had with my coach? Certainly wasn't positive. I would have been happy just playing 1 minute. And there were 2 games in that trip, in the 5 games that we played, there were 2 games that we scored more than 50 points against the other team. So I was telling myself, why can't he put me in, right? Even for the last minute, I can't possibly alter the score, make us lose 50 over points. So on the plane coming back to Singapore, whilst the rest of my teammates were thinking about all the nice stories and the experience of playing games in Australia, I was thinking about how to explain to my parents who were picking me up at the airport, if they were to ask me, did you play? How was the game? So the whole time I was thinking about what to tell them. So my strategy was distract them, don't tell them about the games, right? Talk about all the good things about Australia. And that was what happened. The minute I saw them at the airport, I just told them all the good things about Australia. They didn't even ask me about the games. So, right, but that left me very disappointed. And I felt lousy about myself. And I went out to prove that I can actually be a good player. So amongst all my teammates in the combined schools team, I was the first to break into the under-23 team and the national team. So the learning point is that not everyone will be just as determined as I have been lucky to have been. So you might have lost me if you didn't put things in a proper way. So I guess I was lucky in that sense. So I went on to represent Singapore, not just in the 15s but also the 7s. Right, because of the opportunities to develop and to succeed by the coaches that had an influence on me. Many people don't also see sport necessarily as having different pathways. So, but as you know, in sport there is a pathway of player, coach, and official. So I started as a player, and naturally as a PE teacher, when I went to school, I coached the rugby team. So picked up a lot of things, and the experiences as a player put me in a good position to be a good coach, or at least I like to think that I was a good coach. We had a few successes, but we keep losing to ACSI. Fortunately, the definition of success back then was forgiving, so it was all right, despite not winning any of the titles. But yeah, the experience that I had, not being and not even given a chance to play in Australia, left a big mark on me. So I made sure, as a coach, I made sure that everybody had a chance to play. All right, whether we're going overseas or whether in Singapore, the minute you're in the team, you have a chance to play and represent the school. So that shaped the way my beliefs and my philosophy as a coach. The other pathway is actually the official, and I got injured, tore my ACL, went for reconstruction, and during my rehab, I picked up refereeing and realized that refereeing is not that bad. Not many people want to take up refereeing, particularly rugby, because we tend to get a lot of negative comments from the spectators, the parents and all that. So not many people want to spend a nice Saturday afternoon being yelled at by parents and so on. But I was okay. I kind of liked it. Maybe because I'm married with 2 kids, so I'm used to 3 people talking to me at the same time. So yeah. So I did well enough, I think, and this was the game that I refereed, the Asian Rugby Championship between Japan and Hong Kong, played at the Tokyo Olympic Stadium. And that was the last event that they had at the Olympic Stadium before they demolished it for the upcoming Olympics. And they had the cauldron burning and all that, so it was a special moment. And if I have not torn my ACL and then switched to refereeing, I wouldn't have the opportunity to succeed in that pathway in that sport. Right? So my journey actually has come kind of full circle as a player, and then as a coach, and then as a referee. I had a chance to be picked as the oath taker at the SEA Games in Singapore. That was a special moment as well. I am now back to becoming a coach. So I've retired from international refereeing, and I'm now a coach, high-performance coach in Asia Rugby. And the guys that you see with me there, with the mountain in the background, that's the course that I attended in South Africa, where I worked for 2 weeks with high-performance referee, and these guys are now refereeing the World Series. All right, so the lesson learned is really there are a lot of things that a coach can do to an athlete, including providing them with a pathway to say, hey, if playing is really not for you, or you can't really succeed very much in playing, then maybe coach is another pathway within the sport that you can explore, or match officiating would be another. In my earlier days as a coach, I used to read a lot of magazines and trying to find some ideas on what to do, how can I do things better. And I read a magazine. In one of the magazines that I read, it says the role of a coach is to make himself redundant. And earlier on, Chai was talking about how players need to make a lot of decisions. It's minute-by-minute decision. So I think if we train and we coach our players to be independent thinkers and critical thinkers, then they will become a lot more successful as a player or as a coach or as a referee later on in life. Right. So that's it from me. Last message is don't stop learning. Today I've learned a lot of things from the various speakers. I'm sure you guys did as well. So as a coach, don't stop learning, and I wish you a meaningful and joyful coaching journey. Thank you very much.